on CityCast Nashville, we are joined by former Tennessee Governor and U.S. Senator Lamar Alexander. His new memoir, Education of a Senator, just landed on the New York Times bestseller list. We talk with him about growing up in East Tennessee, his role in desegregating Vanderbilt University, and what advice he'd give Nashville as it rapidly changes while trying to hold on to its soul. It's Tuesday, June 2nd. I'm Maurice Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. We have got to start by addressing the most controversial moment in your new book, The Education of a Senator. You write that just like President Trump, you prefer your steaks to be well done. Sir, please justify yourself.
Well, I grew up that way. You know, if I'd grown up in Texas where you had really fine steaks, I wouldn't do that like my wife did. But I grew up in East Tennessee and the meat we served wasn't that good, so we cooked it.
In all seriousness, though, your career in public service spanned nearly 60 years, starting with an internship for U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy in 1963 and lasting until January 3rd, 2021, 3 days before Trump supporters swarmed the Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of Joe Biden as president. What's the biggest change you've seen in our country since your career started?
The arrival of the social media. About 2008, iPhone, all those devices kind of emerged. And I can remember Scott Brown, who won the Ted Kennedy's seat in Massachusetts after Kennedy died, walking into the Republican caucus, and we asked him how he won. He said, I used Facebook. And most of us were just getting familiar with BlackBerries. Now, communications is really dominated by social media. And to get elected, you have to be very proficient in it. It drives political discourse to the extremes. So our primaries are usually won by people to the far left or the far right, leaving most of the people in the center left or center right with choices that they don't really like in the general election. So that's the biggest change in our politics. We have a digital democracy.
Did you ever have a TikTok?
I didn't. But to promote my book, I've hired a company that's very good at doing videos and on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm impressed with how much it helps the reach of the book.
Let's go back to your childhood in Maryville, Tennessee. The way you described it in your book, it sounds almost like a fairy tale for a boy. But of course, not everyone at that time had such an idyllic childhood. When did you first become aware that maybe women and people of color were perhaps having different life experiences than you? And how did that impact your ideas around politics?
Well, women and people of color were a part of my growing up. My mother had a nursery school and kindergarten in our backyard in a converted garage for 31 years. She taught about 1,000 kids, nursery school in the morning, kindergarten in the afternoon. My dad was on the school board. We had African-American friends. One of my mother's helpers was an African-American woman from Alcoa whose grandson was Wade Houston, later the basketball coach at the University of Tennessee when I was president. My mother resigned from the DAR in 1938 when they wouldn't let Marian Anderson sing at Constitution Hall because she was Black. So I was sensitive to more diversity than one might think growing up in Appalachia.
You've long described yourself as a Lincoln Republican. Can you tell us the story of how you helped desegregate Vanderbilt University?
Well, by Lincoln Republican, my great-grandfather was, someone asked him his politics. His name was John Alexander, and he said, I'm a Republican. I fought for the Union, and I vote like I shot. And so the eastern part of our state fought with the Union during the Civil War. Tennessee seceded, but the mountain people didn't like that, and so they left and fought with the Union, and as a result, the district I've come from in East Tennessee and where I still live has never elected a Democrat to president since Lincoln was president. So you had that background in race relations and civil rights. What you asked me about, 1962, Vanderbilt was all white in the undergraduate school. When I'd enrolled at the undergraduate school, it was all white, but there was an African-American minister named James Lawson who had enrolled in the divinity school. And he was also downtown with John Lewis and others in the civil rights revolution, starting it up. On the campus, we were kind of sleeping through all that. Our major issues were Charm Week and whether to fire the football coach. But I was editor of the newspaper in '62, and to make the story short, I editorialized about the cowardly policy of claiming to be a fine university but not admitting blacks. The Student Senate, led by Dr. John Sargent, who's still around in Nashville, voted on it, voted down desegregating Vanderbilt 15-14. The student body voted on it. They voted down desegregating Vanderbilt.
So wait, how did your role as the editor of the Vanderbilt Hustler help get it done?
Well, it stirred up a fuss, is what it did. I met with the Chancellor Harvey Branscombe then, was about to retire, and he knew that he couldn't recruit a distinguished successor to a segregated college. So I met with him privately, and he encouraged me in my editorials. And he met with Dr. Sargent, later Dr. Sargent, who was the student senator, who introduced a resolution to desegregate the undergraduate school. I remember one in the spring. I was hitchhiking back to Maryville for Easter vacation, and I got a call from the chancellor's office, said he wanted to see me. And I said, I can't go right now. I've got on my T-shirt and blue jeans. I'm getting ready to hitchhike home. And the secretary said, come on. So I did, and I walked in, and Chancellor Branscombe was sitting there, and a tall man was standing, and Branscombe said, Mr. Alexander, Mr. Vanderbilt. Mr. Alexander, tell Mr. Vanderbilt, how do you think desegregating the undergraduate school would affect the students? It was Harold Vanderbilt, who was the grandson of Commodore Vanderbilt, who founded the university, and we talked for about 30 minutes. He was then chairman of the board of the university, and they excused me after 30 minutes. I hitchhiked home, and about a month later, Branscombe and Vanderbilt caused the board to desegregate the undergraduate school. That seems hard to imagine looking back, but in 1962, blacks couldn't find a motel to stay in at night. They sat in the back of the bus. If they went to a football game at the University of Tennessee, where I lived in East Tennessee, they had to sit in Section X, which was reserved for African Americans. So it was a different time.
You worked for Judge John Minor Wisdom, one of the judges who desegregated schools after Brown versus Board of Education. You also briefly worked in the Nixon administration at the birth of the Southern Strategy, the successful plan to swing the South to the Republican Party by appealing to racist white voters. How did those two experiences impact your perspective on civil rights?
It's nice that you put those together, because while I was a law clerk to Judge Wisdom in New Orleans, President Nixon came to New Orleans. He was running for president. He'd been defeated before, and it was 1966, before he was elected in 68. And he and Judge Wisdom had known each other from the Eisenhower days. In fact, they'd worked together on civil rights. And in my book, I have a letter from Nixon to Judge Wisdom in which Nixon said that race should not be an issue for the Republican Party in the South. That was written in 1966. Now, by 1969, when Nixon was president and I was working in the White House, he had apparently changed his mind, because he didn't nominate Judge Wisdom for the Supreme Court, because John Mitchell, Nixon's attorney general, said Wisdom is a damn left-winger.
You were also great friends with Alex Haley, the author of Roots, which was recently banned and then unbanned in Knox County. Why is remembering all of this uncomfortable history important?
Thank you for asking that, because when that happened, I made a statement about it. Our family knew Alex Haley very well. He was probably the world's most celebrated author when I was governor, and he was often at the governor's residence, and our children have many fond memories of him. And we read Roots to our 7-year-old, Will, whom you know, and I remember he sat up straight when Kunta Kinte was captured in the woods. The story of the passage of Africans to America is a story that all Americans need to understand and want to understand, because in the mid-1970s, 7 out of 10 white Americans 8 out of 10 blacks watched at least one of the episodes of Roots, which was on ABC television for a week. And the book was banned under a law because it said it had a violent section in it. Well, the entire passage of blacks from Africa to America was violent. And so we need to teach that. We've gotten in the habit of trying to cancel parts of our history depending on our point of view. We need to teach about the Confederate generals, about the Union soldiers. We need to teach about the denial of civil rights, overcoming the denial of civil rights. We need to talk about how we are work in progress, as the Reverend Ben Hooks used to teach his students at the University of Memphis. He'd say, we're a work in progress. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. We should teach about overcoming the bad, and we should talk about celebrating the good in our country because there's so much good and there's been so much progress.
It is my absolute favorite time of year again. And if you've never been to Musicians Corner in Centennial Park, now is your time to go. Honestly, there is nothing else like it in Nashville. It's a totally free, multi-genre concert series that's been bringing people together for nearly 2 decades. It's super laid back and family friendly. Bring your dog, bring the kids, throw down a blanket, grab some food, and just hang out while listening to the most incredible live music from local artists and beyond. But here's the kicker, folks. You only have 2 more weekends to check out Musicians Corner, Friday nights and Saturday afternoons through June 13th, with live music, food trucks, artisan vendors, craft beer, wine, cocktails, and more. This week's headliners include the Nashville Symphony on Friday and John Paul White on Saturday. And the final weekend has S.G. Goodman and Grizz Folk, plus many other great musicians. It's produced by the nonprofit Centennial Park Conservancy and supported by CityCast Nashville. Visit musicianscorner.com for the full lineup. Looking for something fun and air-conditioned to do with the kids this summer? At the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, local youth 18 and under always get in free if you live in Davidson or any bordering county, including Williamson, Rutherford, Sumner, Wilson, Robertson, or Cheatham County. Plus, up to 2 accompanying adults can get 25% off admission too. And honestly, they have really loaded up the summer programming this year. Now through August 7th, every Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon, they are hosting a musical instrument petting zoo where kids can try out fiddles, banjos, ukuleles, and more. There are also daily family activities in the Taylor Swift Education Center, plus scavenger hunts, coloring pages, sensory kits, and interactive exhibits throughout the museum. Perfect for curious kids and maybe a few grown-ups too. Learn more and plan your visit at countrymusichall-of-fame.org/local-kids. Well, in your book, you talk about the importance of having a strong 2-party system in politics, writing that when Democrats controlled the South and Republicans had no chance of winning state and local elections, quote, Democrats felt free to govern in corrupt and dictatorial ways. With that said, how do you feel about the current Tennessee Republican supermajority?
Well, I think we need a stronger Democratic Party in Tennessee. I mean, I got involved in Tennessee politics in the 60s with Howard Baker to build a 2-party system because for 100 years, Tennessee had a 1-party Democratic rule. And for the most part, there were some exceptions. There was mediocre government, back scratching. And I think it was one reason that by the time I was elected governor, we were the 3rd poorest state. The 2-party system that we created and that was flourished here for about 40 or 50 years attracted very talented people from the Republican and the Democratic side. They competed to see who could do the best job. Bredeson's, Sundquist, Corkers, Frist. And if I proposed a better schools program, the Democratic speaker would propose an even better schools program, then we'd have to compromise and get a result. And the end result of that competition, I'm convinced, is a major reason why between the mid-'80s and the early '90s, Tennessee's family incomes grew faster than any other southern state, according to the University of Tennessee dean of the College of the Baker College of Public Policy. Auto jobs came. I mean, when I became governor, we had one auto parts supplier, Ford Glass Plant. Today, we've got 1,000. Tennessee became the first state to pay teachers more for teaching well, built the best four-lane highway system in the early 90s, did all those things, and it made a lot of progress, built up our confidence. The two-party system is a lot like football. The good players want to play in the Southeastern Conference because that's where the best players are. And if every Tennessee game was 80-7, nobody'd want to go to the game. Nobody'd want to play for the teams. And that's what's happening right now in our political system. In our country, 80% of Americans live in a state where one party dominates the whole thing. California, Democrats, and Texas, Republicans, and Tennessee, Republicans. We'll be better off if we have another 40 or 50 years of competitive two-party competition, and that will require a stronger Democratic Party in Tennessee.
What was your response to the Republicans' recent decision to redistrict Tennessee to eliminate our last majority-minority congressional district?
Well, I think it's bad government to redistrict in the middle of an election. But redistricting has been going on, gerrymandering, since the country was founded. I mean, the first gerrymandered districts were about as bad as the ones we have today geographically. So as long as the districts aren't based on race, it's constitutional, and it'll probably continue. I don't know how to stop it. I think it would be better if Nashville had congressmen and Memphis had congressmen. They'd be better represented in the legislature. But this has been going on forever, and as long as there's one man, one vote, and race is not a factor, as it was in some of the states, and the courts have overturned these redistricting efforts in a few states, then it's going to continue.
With so many cards stacked against the Tennessee Democrats, thanks to the supermajority, how would you then advise them to build a stronger party?
Well, run candidates who can win elections. That's what you have to do. That's what we had to. That's what we had to do. I mean, there had never been a Republican senator elected in Tennessee by the people ever until 1966. Howard Baker ran once and lost, and then he ran once and won. And after that, we gradually began to win more seats because we appealed to independents and people who had been voting for the other party. So the Democrats need to nominate candidates who can appeal to independents and Republicans to vote for them in the general election.
But wouldn't you agree that gerrymandering now plays a big part in that?
Well, it plays some part, but there's always been gerrymandering. And
do you think to this extreme?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at the first congressional district that was ever drawn by Governor Gerry in Massachusetts, it was like a salamander. And that's why they called it gerrymandering. There was a time in the 1840s when the Whigs were losing power, and you'd elect 3 congressmen in one district. And there was a time also when you had a party ballot, so you would vote in Nashville for 9 congressmen for the whole state, because that gave one party an advantage. So the party in power has always tried to manipulate the system to its advantage. And there's not really a constitutional ban on that unless it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution or it violates the one man, one vote rule.
All right, now we need to dig into the Trump presidency. You were there for his first term, and you write that while you mostly agreed with his views, you disagreed with his behavior and temperament. So knowing what you know now, do you regret not voting to impeach him the first time?
No, the issue wasn't his behavior and temperament. You know, as Senator Roy Blunt said, by noon every day, Donald Trump has done almost everything our mothers taught us not to do. You don't get impeached as president for bad behavior. You get impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. And what he was accused of in the first impeachment trial was making a phone call to President Zelensky of Ukraine and encourage him to announce an investigation into Joe Biden, Trump's opponent, and then to threaten to withhold federal U.S. support to Ukraine unless Zelensky did that. Now, that was grossly inappropriate for the president to do, and I said so at the time, but it wasn't a high crime or misdemeanor. Removing him from office for that, I thought, would have been like capital punishment for stealing chickens or something like that.
Do you think that inappropriate behavior signaled towards some of the more criminal behaviors he's engaged in this term?
Well, when you say you're not a criminal unless you're convicted of a crime, and
Alleged?
I think alleged would be a better word.
Right.
I wrote in the book that I agree with many of what President Trump thinks he's tried to do. I mean, the making the southern border secure. I agree with lower taxes. I agree with nuclear power instead of these giant windmills. I disagree with some things too. I disagreed with his encouraging the rioters on January 6th and pardoning those who were involved. I disagree with the cuts in biomedical research. In President Trump's first term, he also recommended cuts in biomedical research, but I was part of a group of senators that increased funding for biomedical research by more than any other part of the budget. I disagree with his advocacy of tariffs. That's like the governor of Tennessee imposing a big sales tax on the people of Tennessee. It increases the cost of living, especially for middle and low income families. And in the first term, when I was there, I was among the senators who argued with him about that, both publicly and private. We also, when he tried to take $3.6 billion of money that we'd appropriated for military barracks and schools at Fort Campbell and other bases and spend it on the border wall, we said, Mr. President, you can't do that. Congress has the exclusive power to appropriate money. And 22 Republicans objected to that, and 12 of us voted against it. But I always did that with respect to the office when I disagreed with him publicly and privately. And I had a good working relationship with him in the same way I did with President Obama. I disagreed with Obama's liberal views, but I had a good working relationship with him because I respected the office. I didn't spend my whole day announcing all of the things I disagreed with him on. I looked for ways to work with him.
You and colleagues like Dr. Bill Frist left behind a legacy of incredible public health programs like PEPFAR and the 21st Century Cures Act. And you even got President Trump's support for the Great American Outdoors Act, which preserved our national parks. So how did it feel to watch so much of that work get dismantled by DOJ at the start of Trump's second term?
Well, I didn't like it on the first at all, particularly as I just said, that I worked with other senators to increase funding for biomedical research. I mean, this is a time of medical miracles. I have a friend in New Orleans who has blood cancer, lymphoma. And today, because of the 21st Century Cures Act we passed and decisions actually made by the Trump FDA commissioner in his first term, you can take cells out of the neck of a person with lymphoma, re-engineer those cells, put them back in his blood system, and literally cure the cancer. We have the arrival of gene editing, where if you can identify the defective gene that's causing a disease, you may be able to cure it by editing the gene. So this is a terrible time to be reducing funding for biomedical research. And it's a bad time to pull out the rug from under the PEPFAR plan that saved the lives of 23 million people with HIV/AIDS that Dr. Frist and George W. Bush created. Now, on the Great American Outdoors Act, you have to give President Trump's credit for his support of that in the first term. Wouldn't have happened without him. And my hope is that I heard the other day that Senator Daines of Montana and Senator King of Maine, a Republican and an independent, have 60 votes to try to pass it again. And if they do, it will be a renewal of what most people consider the most important conservation law since Teddy Roosevelt.
Summer family getaways are where memories are made. And Tupelo, Mississippi is the perfect place for family fun. Make the journey part of the adventure by driving the historic Natchez Trace Parkway. Or for those families in a hurry to get the fun started, Contour Airlines offers daily flights from Nashville to Tupelo. Once you arrive, the outdoors are calling. Spend the day fishing, kayaking, or hiking at Tom Bigby State Park. Or meet more than 260 animals at the Tupelo Buffalo Park and Zoo, where every turn brings a new wild encounter. And when it's time to refuel, Tupelo has over 200 restaurants and 3 shopping districts. So go ahead, visit tupelo.net to plan your epic family getaway and imagine what you can do here. Hey Nashville, if you've ever put off a home project because it just felt like too much, I get it. The research, the scheduling, the disruption, it's a lot. But replacing your windows? Window Nation actually makes it really easy. Their crews have years of experience. They measure everything multiple times so it fits right the first time. And they can usually install your new windows in 1 day or less. 1 day, that's it. And you're not just getting convenience, you're getting quality. Window Nation has installed over 3 million windows, has a 96 customer satisfaction rating, and offers a lifetime warranty on their products. Plus, you can choose from over 1,500 styles and colors, so you're not stuck with something boring. Your home actually gets a glow up. And listen, this month is the time to do it. Window Nation's Buy 4 Windows, Get 4 Free sale is going on now. You can get 0 down and no payments or interest for 2 years. But hurry, sale ends soon. Don't wait to put an end to your window problems. Schedule a fast, free consultation now at windownation.com. Well, let's get back to your book. There was profound sadness towards the end of it as you wrote about the January 6 riots and the loss of your wife, Honey. Where do you find your joy these days?
Well, life is a gift. I find my joy in remembering Honey, remembering our son Drew, who died. He was a music publisher with Curb Publishing Company. I have been delighted with the number of people whom I didn't know, songwriters and others, who'd come up and tell me how much he helped them during his lifetime. There's a Drew Alexander Day at the Second Harvest Food Bank that honors the work he did there and with the homeless people in Nashville. Writing the memoir gave me a lot of joy because it reminded me of how important and unselfish Honey had been during the time we'd been married. I mean, we got married when I was working in the Nixon White House, and she had her stroke just before I retired from the Senate. And the whole time she would say things like, well, when I tried to run for the second time for governor, she said, now, wait a minute. First, I want to know, why are you running and what do you hope to accomplish? And then she said, and could we have another campaign mode? Because she thought I was a really dull candidate in 1974. And so we talked about it. She said, do what you like to do. You like to walk, you like music, you like the outdoors, you like to meet people. So we came up with the idea of walking across the state in a red and black plaid shirt. I got a flatbed truck, 4 guys from the University of Tennessee marching band, and we get up on the truck and play Mama Don't Allow No Music played around here. And I spent the night with 73 different families, most of whom I didn't know before. And it made me a much better candidate, much better governor. So she was unselfish and purposeful. And I was very lucky to have that marriage. In the last 2 years of her life, why I was out of office and I was able to begin to give back some of what she'd given to me for 50 years.
You and Honey were also obviously so tightly knit into the fabric of Nashville throughout your lives. We have personal connection through Westminster Presbyterian Church, and I'm also good friends with your nephew, David, who I have to shout out right now for thank you for helping me get this interview. But as you see our city grow into the kind of place that hosts Super Bowls, do you have any words of wisdom for how we can keep Nashville's soul intact?
Well, I think the number one goal of the Chamber of Commerce should not be recruiting more jobs to Nashville, but keeping it a nice place to live. And that by itself will recruit jobs. Nashville's a hot city, and there used to be a committee of men that would meet in the 50s and 60s privately called the Watauga Group, whose goal was to keep Nashville from becoming Atlanta. They didn't want Nashville to explode and grow with all the problems of growth. So my advice would be to use your word, focus on the soul of Nashville, on the music, on the parks, on the people, on the schools. Focus on those things. Make sure they're in as good shape as possible. And then do what we did 40 years ago. raise the gas tax and build some roads. So you're not sitting in a traffic jam for an hour driving from Franklin to Nashville.
What about a light rail, Lamar?
Light rail would be good if you had enough money.
That's right.
And the idea of trying it out I-24 probably was a good idea. It's hard to change the habits of people. They want to drive in their cars, and I don't know the solution. We could probably double the number of interstates coming into Nashville. In fact, we did that when I was governor. We built 840 all the way around the bottom half of Nashville. And it would still be congested because people would drive their cars. Maybe we'll see a change when these automatic vehicles, these self-driving vehicles show up and people decide to take those instead of driving their cars, or the smaller cars come. Sooner or later, people are going to get tired of sitting in traffic jams and they're going to look for an alternative. But those are the kinds of things the Chamber of Commerce should be focusing on in Nashville.
What about the Tesla tunnel to the airport?
Well, that is something. I'm anxious.
Never thought I'd see that, right?
You know, the alleged reason for that is that Elon Musk plans to put civilization on Mars, and he wants to build tunnels in Mars for people to live in, and this is his prototype. So he figures if he could build it here and other places, then he could do it on Mars. Now, I don't know that that's true, but that's a good enough story to tell on your podcast. And knowing the kind of things that Elon Musk does, it's very likely to be true.
Oh, well, this has just been such a pleasure. Thank you. I know you've been so busy. You're now on the New York Times bestseller list. So
yeah, I was lucky with that. I think people may be ready for a little optimism and a little good humor. And, you know, the last thing I would say is people are down on the country right now and its institutions. But if you stop and think about it, I mean, we produce 26% of all the money in the world for 4% of the people. We have almost all the best universities, the strongest military. This is where to start a business. Millions want to move here. Very few want to leave here. So we should be ashamed of ourselves if we don't take advantage of this 250th birthday and look at our history and see what's made us so strong today and build on it. I think we can do that. And I think the reason I wrote the book was to let people know that despite all the indignities, that I got up every day as governor or senator thinking I might be able to do something good for my state or country, and I went to bed most nights thinking I had. And an opportunity to serve in public life is the best way to help the republic survive and to help the most people.
Thank you again for speaking with us today.
Thanks for your time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Nashville neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our CityCast Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!